So how'd you like the way I built up that suspense? Huh? Huh? That won't mean anything to you people watching on YouTube. I just decided to start a little bit later today. We had the thing running, and then I hit the record button. And now all is right with the world. And hi, everybody. Welcome to 179, episode 179 of the Stratosphere Lounge, brought to you by your host, Bill Whittle, and the paying members of BillWhittle.com, for whom we are eternally grateful. Well, let's see. We got an interesting topic today called Where Do We Go From Here? And we'll have a look at that in a minute. Tell you a little bit about what's happening first. I've got a very, very big event coming up on the 17th on Saturday. Usually I'll go to an event to be a speaking event, and, maybe I'll get there at 6:30 or something and go on at 8, be there till 9 or 10, and then get a chance to talk to a few people and then head out. But in this case, it's the Connect the Dots event for Saving California, which is in itself a pretty interesting topic. And it's going to be in Burbank on the 17th, and needless to say, it'd be worth the price of admission just to be able to hear me. But actually, I'm going to be there instead of, as I said, for 2 or 3 hours. I'm going to be there for 9 or 10. I start in the morning. I think we kick off at 9 o'clock. I'm emceeing the thing along with some amazing guests, which we'll get to in a second. And I should have plenty of time to meet pretty much anybody. So if it's within your hemisphere, if you're in the northern and western hemisphere, you might want to head over to this. So I'm not joking about this now. Honestly, I'm serious. The list of people who are going to be here is absolutely amazing. I pales in comparison. So there's that guy in the upper left who looks particularly old there. David Horowitz, of course, a warrior and incredible insight into the left because he used to be one. He was one of the charter members of the progressive left. And after this woman who he recommended to the Black Panthers as a secretary was found floating in San Francisco Bay, he basically spent the rest of his life repenting and trying to repent, and he's a tremendous warrior and really understands how the left works, and especially how things work in California. Then there's Sabo, who is the coolest guy on the team, I think. It's going to be down to him or Alfonso or Rachel. But Sabo is a street artist. He's one of the few people that absolutely has cutting-edge talent, pop culture sensitivity, and sensibilities. And he's going to be there. I think he's an incredibly powerful player. I remember seeing his artwork up here in Los Angeles, and I was just astonished. It's like, this is really excellent, sharp, piercing commentary, and it's from us. Who knew? Charlie Kirk, of course, is the head of TPUSA. We're all going to be working for him some days, probably future president of the United States. Charlie is moving mountains and changing the world on college campuses, so he's going to have an awful lot to say, especially about the future, because, the nexus of this whole thing is Berkeley, right? I mean, Berkeley, California, all the California universities horrible. And Charlie's leading a really great team of young people out there. And every time I do a TPUSA event, I get a little hope back. Rusty Humphreys is a radio talk show, and Rusty's a great friend of mine. And Rusty, it's been quite a few years now. I want to say 3 or 4 maybe. But I hosted his radio show, I want to say 5 times. So, I do a Stratosphere Lounge once a week, or once every other week, I guess, depending. And I talk on the internet for maybe 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer. When you do the Rusty Humphrey shows or any of these other shows, you have to do 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that takes some real talent. So it's going to be good to see him here. Antonio Okafor is one of my favorite people ever, and big gun rights advocate, and just like yours truly and everybody else on that list, I'm sure, has been just vilified. He's going to have all kinds of stories about, the destruction of her life. And then, of course, there's Richard Ramirez, the superb editorial cartoonist. I don't know if he's won Pulitzer Prizes. I want to say he has. It's Sabo, Cheryl. And he speaks volumes and so on. And I'll just move the mail. Get Evan Sayed, who understands the left in a very interesting way. Evan Sayed, also former leftist, and his bit about the people who do things and don't do things is maybe the funniest and the clearest thing I've ever heard about the difference between the right and left. I have to tell you, I don't know much about John Fund or Lydia Dernier, so I'm going to get a chance to hear them when I'm there. And finally, there, James O'Keefe, who is, again, when you want to say just value in terms of the culture war, O'Keefe. Well, first I consider James a friend, and James O'Keefe has actual, genuine, major, real physical courage, and has been threatened with lawsuits since he began doing this, and jail time and harassment and all the rest. But he does the one thing that nobody else can do, because it's great to make an intellectual point, or it's great to make an emotional point like Sabo does, or whatever the case may be, and then all the rest of it. But when you hear and see people saying things in their own words on videotape, it's the only thing that I know of that's left in the culture that's essentially irrefutable. It just is simply irrefutable. And I think his work is just beginning. I'd always love to have, I know he's trying to assemble and maintain an little army of undercover agents, and I'd love to have him out there, because there used to be something like this back in America called the press, and the press was not a function of a political party. It wasn't audiovisual department for the Democratic Party. The press used to dig up things and find out stuff on people who may be not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and he's doing it, and he's going to continue to do it. So it really, truly is an all-star event. And if you're close, if there's anything, I'm just based on what I see up ahead, you never know until it's over, but just based on that lineup, this is without question the most talent-rich program I've ever done by a wide margin. So if you can make it. I'll put a link here on the Facebook page. Is already up on the Facebook page, rather. I'll put a link up on the Stratosphere Lounge page on YouTube, rather. So get your tickets now, because got to tell you, if you can possibly make it, it's important that you do. These kind of things they're really almost like oxygen, and it's difficult if you don't live in California to understand it. But I can tell you this, everybody on that list, with the exception of the two I don't know very well, they need you to be there, me especially it included. I know a lot of people think that this is kind of a one-way street, where the people in the spotlight get to get up and pundicize on whatever is on their mind. But speaking for myself and for many of the others I've spoken to, it really is a two-way street. Not only do we get great stories, great ideas, great information from having you guys come down, but we get a tremendous spiritual and psychological boost as well, which we need just as much as anybody, honestly. There are just times when it's just, it just seems so daunting. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about today too. So that's, again, that's on the 17th of March in Burbank, beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And if you can possibly make it, we'd love to see you. Let's see. A little bit of interesting news. I know my wife is watching the show. At least she'd better be. I'm watching. So I'm a little reluctant to tell this story. Just something that I think I just wanted to say. So we've been renting a house, and we just love it. And we in fact did a right angle this week about the GOP and being able to reach urban populations. It really almost turned into kind of a the benefits of living in a house versus apartment living, and the whole idea of a farm, and the fundamental virtue of a farmer community, and so on, and all kinds of things. But we've got this house that we're just so happy with, and we're renting it in here in the LA area. And we have this tiny little backyard. It's not that tiny, really, I guess, by modern standards. But we just love it. We just, for 8 or 9 months, we just sit out there every day and eat dinner and watch the sun go down. And at nighttime, we'd have a little menagerie. You know, we'd have, first there was a possum. Natasha saw a possum out back, kind of off in the distance, away from the lights. If you've never seen one in the flesh, certainly from any kind of distance, and especially if you're new to the country and not used to it, a possum will look like a particularly enormous rat. It's got a long pointy nose and a big naked tail, and it just kind of lumbers along. It's like, you know, it's like uber rat. It's like the Captain America of rats, if you're going to be a rat. This is what you're hoping for. But possums are they're very primitive animals, you know, very primitive. They're marsupials, and they're one of these survivors because among the other menagerie guests we have are raccoons and neighborhood cats, and there is if you think about it, when you look at them, when you look at how they move, if you look at their behavior, their sensory behavior, and all the rest of it, the raccoons and the cat especially are just, you could just tell they're just a couple million years more advanced in terms of their construction. The possum's very, very primitive kind of an animal, and I like them because, you know, I first of all, like all animals, I feel a great deal of you know, just actual affection towards pretty much any animal, really, honestly. So I always like seeing them out there. It always just makes my day. It just reminds me that, you know, that there's all this stuff going on, and living with grass under your feet is... I lived in an apartment for 40 years, and I was a little reluctant to move to this house, to be honest with you, but Natasha knew from the beginning that just getting grass under your feet does things for you in a way that I simply just didn't understand, and I still don't completely understand. I just know it works. So we have this outdoor menagerie, and of them all, I just adore the raccoons. I just adore them. They will come right up to the glass of the door and just stand there and look inside. You know, and they're just adorable, cool little creatures. So anyway, we're used to seeing these things around. We've been there for, I want to say, 9-10 months now, almost, something like that. Well, a couple days ago, it was yesterday, day before yesterday, I come back from work and I walk in the house and I'm just hit with this smell. It's like, oh boy. Natasha, just turn the sound down just for a second, would you? Just turn it down just for a second. Okay? Good. I walked in and I was kind of afraid it was like a traditional Russian meal. That was my first thought. Hey, anyway, back, honey. So walked in and this I was kidding about the meal thing, but you walk in the house, it's like boom. It's like, oh boy, and something had died in the vicinity, which means under the house, because we've got a big, a fairly narrow crawl space down there. And I don't want to gross anybody out. I'll just tell you the rest of the story as sanitary a fashion as I can. So we knew there was something under there, and it hadn't been moving for a while. So this smell just suddenly came up. It just appeared in the afternoon, and by the time I got home, it was late afternoon. Called an animal removal service that said they could be there the next day. That night we had about 260 scented candles in the bedroom, and we're just hanging on for dear life. Anyway, the animal control guy, the animal removal service, private service, said they'd be there the next day, and the price was dependent on how hard it would be to get the thing out from where it was. So it seems fair to me. Great. They show up the next day at 1 o'clock. I guess that would be yesterday now as I record this, right after Right Angles went home. And these two guys get out of this truck. One of them is considerably bigger than the other one. Both really friendly guys, good guys. And this is the reason I want to tell the story, get to this the dramatic conclusion in the end here. But I looked at the entrance to the crawl space under the house. It's covered with a little grating about this big. I didn't think I could get through that under any circumstances. And the guy who was going to try and get through there was bigger than me. So this guy puts on a blue jumpsuit, and he's got a plastic bag, and just standing close enough to the entrances to the crawl space under the house, just in the general vicinity, was really pretty sickening experience by this point. And I watched this guy go in there, and his partner said, "You want a mask?" And the guy just said no, and he just crawled in there. And we had thought that the perp was going to be in the southwest corner of the house. And that's where I was sure it was, because that's where the smell was the strongest. So that's where he went in. And it turned out that was because of airflow under the house. He had to crawl the entire width of the house in a very narrow crawl space, just enough to sneak in there. And he came out with a bag that was filled with something that I didn't get to see, but the guy who took the bag practically barfed on the spot, And it was a possum that was the size of a small dog, easily the size of a large dachshund, for example. And this guy comes out, hands the bag. He says, "You all right?" His partner says, "You all right? You want some water?" And he goes, "No." And then I ran inside to get the check, and he's got a hose on his face. And he's just basically, just trying to recover his sense of smell. And I just thought, I just admire this man. I admire him so much. One of the, it's really interesting and great being married. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't mention this first. What's the matter with me? I'll get to this in a second. No, I'm not. I'm going to mention this next week. We're going to have a special guest next week. I'm not even going to touch it now. Anyway, so I just admired him so much. And the night before, 2 nights before, were the Oscars, and I realized, that these are the kind of people that these glitterati make fun of all the time. These people. This is why I like Mike Rowe so much, and the reason I was such a fan of Mike Rowe well before I met him was Dirty Jobs. He was the voice for Deadliest Catch, but I saw a lot of Dirty Jobs episodes, and one of them was dead animal removal kind of thing. And Mike is the real deal. Mike Rowe, if you've seen him on TV, that's exactly what he's like. He's just a good man and funny and warm and everything. And I was just struck by the courage of this guy. Now, I want to be clear on this. I remember what I was going to say. I was talking about Natasha. When you married to somebody from a different culture, you see things in American culture through their eyes, things that you've never seen before, and some of them are very good, and some of them are not so good. The city that I live in is far filthier than I ever realized, only because my wife came from a spotless city, which would happen to be Moscow. There's a lot of reasons for that, and one of them is in Moscow, if you're emperor or czar, you can just basically say, "I hereby commit, for $30 billion to cleaning up Moscow," and it gets done. The flip side of that is, if you live in Los Angeles, they can take $30 billion from the resident and then not do anything and just pocket the money. I'd rather have the Russian system in that particular case. But one of the things that was so disturbing to my wife, who's also a big animal lover and such a kind soul, is that in California anyway, you just don't see dead animals, not even roadkill. And apparently in Russia, it's just everywhere. So it had been a while for me since I've been riding my bike or walking, home from school and stuff, and basically seen an animal carcass up close. But prior to this adventure, we noticed a kind of a strange smell coming out of the garage, which is a weird sort of garage, and poked around in there, didn't find anything. And then I want to say about 2-3 weeks ago, we found, Natasha found a little fur, and I turned the corner, and there was a possum in the back corner of this garage. It had been there been immobile for 6 months, something like that. And had to actually shovel that guy into a bag. And I didn't think that was going to be that tough. It was a lot tougher than I thought it would be. It wasn't it was just, I don't know, it was just the face of the guy. And this is the point that I find interesting about all of this. So what I'm actually saying is, somebody said, dead animal removal service, what a luxury. Yes. And not only was I glad to pay them for the service, I ended up tipping that guy a large cash tip, just because he did something that I really didn't want to do. And I was very, very, very grateful for it. So the question I started having was, could I have done that? And I'm sure I could have. It would have been a real horror for me, but I could have done it. Small spaces don't. If there was no one else to do it, it's either I do it or we put up with that smell for 3 months. That's not going to happen. So I'm sure I could have done it. There's no way I could have done it without just barfing all over the place, because this guy who does it for a living was just barely hanging on. And I just wanted to bring this story up because, number one, I'm grateful to this guy and the service, and you cannot overstate one's gratitude for people who do these dirty jobs. I just can't overstate my gratitude for them. I try to think of them as much as I can, and I don't do it as much as I'd like. But when I get a chance to actually be confronted by it, I'm just so enormously grateful. And that guy, I cannot tell you how much more I admire and respect that man than I do these university PhDs. I mean, enormous. It's night and day. It's night and day. And I was very, very glad that it didn't have to be me to do it, because if there hadn't been somebody else to do it, I would have had to do it, and I didn't want to, and I still don't want to. That was a nasty, nasty piece of work. He had to crawl a long, long way in a very narrow crawl space, looking around. He basically had to crawl the entire floor plan of the house before he found this thing. And this possum was, without the tail. Without the tail, he's like this. And he'd gotten so big that his head, I don't know whether it's because he was eating a lot of garbage or a lot of food or something. I did, Dave Big Booty. I actually slipped him double that. And with the tail, it was even longer, and the tail had been, it was like a kind of a half a tail with a stumper, had been bitten off and stuff. And this guy, I hadn't seen this before. There were possums in Florida where I grew up. My brother had a couple of possums in the house for a while, baby possums as pets. That's my brother. And I thought they were cool. But this thing was a, Hogzilla? This was Possumzilla, is what it was. I'm not making it up. Hogzilla, for those of you that don't know, and I'm sure the name's been applied to a bunch of different animals. Hogzilla is one of those wild pigs that ends up being the size of a truck. It's the size of a pickup truck. It's a half a ton of wild boar. Just this monster creature. Well, this was Possumzilla. And when I don't know, was it a function of size or old enough, or whether he just had enough garbage in the neighborhood to eat or whatever, but his head changed shape. Normally a possum's got a very conical head, real long nose, conical head. This guy had he looked exactly like a giant hog. He had this kind of almost like this, George Lucas kind of thing under his neck there. And And Natasha, I never saw it myself, but Natasha went out back once or twice and happened to stumble on him there. He just was around the corner or something, and he would start doing, this kind of thing. Like, I'm not backing down. He's just, just a. I don't know for sure that was the one, but I'm thinking it was based on the size. Anyway, that's it. Merlin Magnus says, "Thank heavens for economic desperation." I just caught that comment. I don't know if it's related to this guy doing this job. But I'll just say this. Again, I just wanted to talk about this unpleasant subject because I think it's an absolute national disgrace that we not only don't recognize these people, but that the people we do recognize and pay hundreds of millions of dollars to use every opportunity they have to scoff at guys like this and call them Nazis or just the fact that they voted for Donald Trump. I must be an idiot or something. It's wrong, It's morally wrong for movie stars who are the most pampered humans who ever existed on the face of planet Earth to mock people like that who do this every day, so that you and I don't have to. It sounds like I'm putting him almost in the same level as the military, and I don't put him quite in that level because the Possum's not likely to shoot back. But with that said, he's just another one of those amazing people that keep this thing functioning. And to some level, I just this second realized, to some level, it's only because of people like that we can afford to be as stupid as we are out here in California. I'm going to be shooting a video on this very subject tomorrow, on how Californians are the most ignorant people on the planet, and they can afford to be because California is the place furthest from reality on the planet. And I realize now that while I'm very grateful for that service and that man being there, if they hadn't been there, I would have had to go. And if I'd had to go, I wouldn't be such a crybaby about things. And I think if, let's just say, I think if Sarah Silverman or Jimmy Kimmel or, any of that crowd had to crawl into their house and remove possums that have been dead for 6 or 7 or 8 days, they probably would not be so flip with the people who have to do that and who do it for a living. So there. All right, let's see what's up on the big board here. Interesting topic today. Where do we go from here? I specifically didn't limit that in any particular way. So we'll be very curious to see what we get on this one. Okay, here we go. By the way, I got some glasses the other day. I have had distance glasses since, I didn't really need them. Even after I flunked the Air Force Academy, I didn't wear glasses again until I was in my 40s. But I got a prescription right after I failed the vision test for the Air Force Academy. So my vision in my not far distant vision has actually deteriorated very little. My near vision is useless, and that presbyop. Oh my God. The Presbyterian eye problem. Presbyop. Anyway, the ability to see at middle distance went overnight. I was plugging cables into the back of a DVD. I remember it was probably 46 or something. And I was just plugging these audio cables in. I said, which one of these? And I looked at it. I said, what the hell's the matter? It's right here. I cannot focus on it. I just can't focus. I bring all this up because I'd had distance glasses for my entire life, and then in the last 10, 7, 8 years or so, I've had bifocals for distance and then reading. And then I finally got a pair of glasses because my monitor here and my monitor at home are both about 8 to 12 inches beyond my reach. And I can't focus on that with either of those. Now with this guy, it's like, oh my God, I'm on television. I'm in some kind of lunatic bin. And the only reason I say that is because these are not particularly stylish because I didn't need them to be stylish. But I've been using them all day, and now I can read the screen. And the problem is that when I take them off, I can't read anything. Why, mama, as the Russians like to say. And I ought to know, because I'm half Russian myself. Presbyopia, thank you. Matt J. Harris, Presbyopia, yes, and all the rest of you, thank you very much.